Hey everybody, welcome to the Cop House Podcast. I'm Doug and I'm the son.
And I'm Ron. I'm the dad.
This is a bi-weekly podcast that covers all things policing. We are a father and son combination with over 33 combined years of police experience. Our show will tackle anything and everything you could possibly think of regarding the great policing profession. Nothing is off limits.
Welcome to episode 9 of the Cop's House. You know, Doug, we haven't recorded since February 22nd.
We're a little rusty now.
So if this gets a little rusty, I hope our audience will forgive us.
They will.
Our faithful audience. Let me try that again. Welcome to episode 9 of the Cop House Podcast. We are 2 generations, 1 great calling.
We're behind a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. We have not recorded in, over a month. 6 weeks?
Well, we can't get fired because we're not getting paid. So.
That's true, yes. But we thought we would dive into a very exciting and compelling topic to come back after our 6-week hiatus. We're going to talk about police administration. Now, hopefully about 90% of our audience didn't just click the off button on us.
Don't do it yet.
Don't do it yet. No, because we have a great guest, a good friend of mine. I want to welcome to the show Chief Paul Shakinas. Chief, welcome.
Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show. Chief Paul Shakinas, he and I have known each other for a lot of years. We started out as cops together. We did not work for the same agency. We were pretty much border cities, not quite border cities, but very close. We were officers together. We were sergeants together. And then Paul made, I don't know what he was thinking, but he got promoted to the rank of chief of police at a pretty young age. He made chief even before I made chief. So Paul he's served his community in Southeast Michigan at the rank of police officer, police sergeant, police captain, and about 14 years ago, he attained the rank of chief of police. Paul currently serves his agency as the chief of police, but he's also the deputy director of public safety. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go forward, some of the challenges associated with being a public safety director. Paul has a master's of public administration, a master of science in homeland security and emergency management. He's a proud member of the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the Michigan Association of Chiefs of Police, and the Chief of Police organization here in the county where he polices. Paul, thank you for joining us on the show. It's a privilege having you here.
Thank you, sir.
We've been friends for a long time, and as I said, we were colleagues together, and then we were chiefs together, and now, fun fact, Doug, Paul's actually my boss.
Yeah?
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
I knew that.
Yeah, I know you knew that. The audience didn't. Chief is actually my boss. I'm the chaplain for his police agency as well as the fire department. And I'm also one of his dedicated crossing guards.
I also knew that.
I can tell you're just astounded by that.
That's a lateral transfer from chief to crossing guard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Lateral transfer. Making almost as much as I made as the chief, as the crossing guard.
No, I'm sure. For your hour and a half shift.
Yeah, a week. Right. Chief, why don't we jump right into this? Could you talk briefly about what does a police... Talk generally, I guess, about police administration. When we think of the 2 different categories of employee at a police department, I typically break it down by administrators, those people who maybe work in records or they're in some sort of support capacity, as well as the upper management. And then there's police operations, and those are the folks who kind of do the direct delivery of police services, the patrol officer, maybe a detective. Talk a little bit for our audience who might not exactly know what a chief of police does. Can you talk to that?
Well, a little bit of everything, and I guess it varies. You were the chief in a little bit larger department than I am. So in a small police department, I joke that I change the trash. I'm a janitor. I'm a psychologist. I'll be whatever they need me to be. But I guess it all depends on the day and what's going on. I mean, a lot of it falls on policies and budget, and staffing is one of our biggest issues, and I know we'll talk about that a little later. But just getting men and women to show up for the job these days is it's just difficult. I think things have changed a lot in the last 23 years. When I started, it was the suck it up, shut your mouth, do your job, and I want to hear from you, and I want to see from you. And now the newer generation is they're very involved. It's very different. They want to know why they're doing it. They want to know what's the plan. And I think it's for the better. It is. It's nice to have the men and women involved. It's just very different than what I'm used to. But I guess it depends on the day.
Okay, so when you and I would have started in policing, you somewhat alluded to this. Perhaps the older generation who trained us perhaps had that suck it up attitude. You are going to work this overtime. You are going to do as you're told. You're not seeing that quite as much now with this
not at all
generation of police officer, I guess.
No, not at all. Okay. I mean, obviously we're a paramilitary organization. That's what all police departments are based on. A rank, a structure, everybody's professional. But it's just very different now. Of nope, my kids have something. I can't work this shift and make $600 in a night working a 12-hour shift at time and a half. I'd rather be home with my kids.
Right.
It's very different, and so I guess I would say, Doug, that's more your generation, and not insulting or anything like that. Just you guys do it different than we did. Is that fair?
Yeah, I see that a lot with my coworkers, and I mean, having been around it since I was a little kid, I feel like as compared to some of the guys that I work with, I tend to somewhat identify more with maybe the older, maybe kind of transitional, but that's probably just because I was around it since I was little.
Yeah. Doug's an old man trapped in a young man's body.
Yeah.
So, he has been since he's been about 5.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. So maybe that wasn't fair. I'm going to lump you in because I know we beat up on the millennials a lot. But so I don't know if I'm way off topic, but things are just different. It's a different mindset, and again, I don't think it's bad because when you do get them involved, you got these young men and women, and they're committed. They're 100%, and but if you don't include them, they'll be 0% on the opposite side of it.
Okay.
So
gotcha.
And that's something I've had to learn. I had to change that.
All right. So as the chief of police, and you alluded to this, you said you're the chief for a smaller agency, and I also was the chief and the public safety director for a small agency. You said a little bit bigger than yours. Man, not much bigger. I mean, we both ran. You're currently running, and we ran pretty small agencies. What are some of the challenges with being a police administrator in a smaller agency?
Oh, I think today, hands down, it's staffing. I mean, we are the lowest staffed our department has been since the late 80s. I mean, it's incredible. When we used to put out ads for part-time officers, and I love my part-time officers. We've had some phenomenal part-time officers. I never want to beat up on them. And there's always a hierarchy within any field, and sometimes they're looked down on. But we've had some amazing. 10 years ago, we could put out an ad for a part-time officer, and we'd get 25, 30 applications. The last 2 times we put out, we have had 0 applications.
Wow.
And that's tough. I mean, it's gotten to the point where it's difficult to find full-time officers, and on a limited budget, it's just difficult to hire. And we're not making widgets. We're not building Fords on the production line. We need people out there to be on the streets and respond to calls. And if you don't have people, you don't have police.
That's right. What do you do at that point? I mean, if you don't have people to staff a shift, I mean,
the agency directly to the south, and they also bordered you. They're about a 70 person police department, and I believe they're 6 or 8 officers short.
Wow.
And I believe their top out's in the $90,000 for a police officer with phenomenal retirement and health care. So I don't know what the answer is. It's not just money. That's not it. And maybe it's everywhere.
Chief, you're a member of the International Association of Chiefs of Police, so I assume you stay pretty plugged in with with trends in policing in general and nationwide. Is this a phenomenon that we're seeing across the nation?
Oh yeah. It's everybody you talk to. I have a good friend who worked here in our small department and then went to Southern Florida, and he's a major in a large police department down there, and they struggled. And they have all the fun stuff. They have the SWAT team, the canine units, the Marine unit, all that kind of stuff that detectives. And until they started paying ridiculous sums of money, they couldn't get anybody. And now their officers are making $100 and some $1,000 a year in top pay. It's incredible.
Wow.
But I don't know. It's not all just money.
Doug, are you seeing that at your agency too? That staffing is an issue?
Yeah. I mean, even us where we're at, we have pretty high turnover. I mean, nothing compared to what it was in Detroit. Turnover there was ridiculous, but yeah, I mean, even we still have high turnover, and we're sponsoring people. Like we.
Can you explain to the audience what it means to sponsor someone?
Yeah, rather than pay for yourself to go through a police academy and then go and apply to departments as an already certifiable police officer, you apply having never done the academy, and then if you're sponsored, the department that is hiring you will pay you an hourly rate and pay for you to go to the academy. And I mean, even with sponsoring people, it's kind of hard. I'm not in administration, but I still see things and see kind of the revolving door of deputies that we have coming in. We had a guy get sponsored, and then 3 months later he went to a different department.
Took that training that he received on the county's dime.
Yep.
And then went to another agency. Huge phenomenon at Detroit, I imagine, too.
Oh yeah, Detroit was crazy. Detroit, we would have sometimes people still in the academy, not graduated yet, already applying to other departments, having never set foot in a precinct.
Wow. That's
brutal.
At some point, you have to look at I don't know, maybe a person's character. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, not that you should feel like you owe a department anything, but at a certain point, you still kind of crummy to do it.
Very.
Before you even set foot in a precinct. It's one thing to do a couple of years and then decide somewhere else is a better situation for you and your family, but to go there with a plan of, okay, I'm going to let them just pay for this for me and then I'm out, it's kind of crummy.
Yeah, I agree, Ron. That's I don't know how people do that. I mean,
no.
I agree. You go on, you do a few years, you pay that back in a way. Yeah. And then if you want to move on, it's not for you. That's different.
Then it's a business transaction at that point.
Right.
And some people say, well, hey, it's a business transaction to begin with. You hired me. Maybe. I don't know.
It is, and I think sometimes...
It seems a little disloyal to me, but...
It's different, like, if your circumstances change. Sure. But, like, to go in there planning on, telling them in an interview, I can't wait to be a Detroit cop, and then before you even graduate, I'm applying to somewhere else.
You don't even have keys to the precinct yet, and you're gone.
Right.
Yeah.
Which that wasn't me trying to bash the guy that I was talking about from my department. I think he had some family circumstances change.
Right.
It's just as an example, that kind of stuff happens a lot.
Sure. I'm going to run the risk of sounding like a crotchety old man here.
You are.
But I know I am, yes. But back in 1994, when I went through the academy, I was pre-service. Chief, were you pre-service? Did you put yourself through the academy?
I did.
Yeah. So we were pre-service. We paid for the honor of being abused at the police academy, and back then the police academy was about anywhere from $3,000 to $4,000. We paid for the privilege of going and getting screamed at the police academy for about 16 weeks, and then we graduated with a beautiful sheet of paper that said you're certifiable as a police officer, and then you had to go look for a police job. And I remember walking into the gymnasium of a high school with about 500 applicants. Applying for to take the written test, and I think the city was hiring 2 maybe.
Yep.
So,
incredible difference. I mean, I remember going the same thing. Area department here in Oakland County, walk in 100 and some, and same thing, and going through the interview process, and holy smokes, those guys were rough. And now I'm happy if someone shows up for their shift.
Right.
Do you think that produced higher quality candidates when there was that many people vying for 1 or 2 spots?
I didn't get the job, when I applied with 499 other people, and I think I was a pretty high quality guy, Doug. So I don't know.
Well,
No.
you got a job.
I did. Forgive me. That sounded a little cocky on my part. But what do you think, Chief? Does that when you have that many people?
Boy, that's a great question. I got to be honest with you, because I looked through the years and some of the quality of people when we had 30 applicants at a time. Sometimes I'm not sure if it was that great. I don't know. I mean, in this day and age, post George Floyd, which 2020, if you were a cop at that time, we all know what that was. Mm-hmm. The world's a different place, and you have to want to be a police officer today. It's not just something like, maybe that'd be cool. I'll check it out. You have to want to do it.
Right.
Because people are nuts, and it's only gotten worse. And to take some of the abuse that people seem to shell out these days, it's more dedication than maybe in the past.
You alluded to this a little bit, Chief, about money being a motivator. How far does money take you as far as being a motivator to wanting to be a cop? You spoke of your buddy down in South Florida. Beautiful place to live, making all kinds of money as an entry-level police officer, and yet they still can't fully staff a department.
I think it helps to a certain point. Obviously, in any line of work, if you can't pay your bills, you're not happy. But what's so different today than it was 5-10 years ago are all of the union bargaining agreements that lays out pay scale and pensions and healthcare and all that stuff. It's pretty much all online. So what I've noticed is that so back in when I first started, now I sound like the old guy. It didn't matter whether you were on the east side of Haggerty Road or west side of Haggerty Road. The pension was pretty much the same. The healthcare was pretty much the same. Maybe some of the opportunities were different, but for the most part, it was the same. Today, that's not even remotely close. Some people have some departments have a traditional pension with a defined benefit pension where you get a certain amount for the rest of your life. Some have like a 401k style. So it's very, very different. Pay scales are very different. So what I've noticed is that men and women, they shop. I mean, they know that if they go a county over, this department pays $10,000 a year more, and you'll get a real pension. The healthcare is better, and I can make detective in 3 years versus 10 years.
Right.
So they know these things, and they like Doug said, they're willing to do it. They're willing to make that change. It's a transaction. So I think that's what's changed a little bit. So there is some money aspect to it. I don't think that men and women are any less dedicated. In fact, some ways I think they're more dedicated today than they were. But it's definitely different. So you used to have to lock into a pension.
Right.
I had to do 10 years before I could ever get some type of pension. We call it in Michigan, it's Municipal Employees Retirement System, MERS. The MERS sand pit. Once you're in the sand pit and you're at a place for 10 years, boy, it's hard to move.
It is.
And now the departments that don't have that, like you do a couple years and this other department's paying $10,000 a year more, and I'll get a take-home car, and they'll go. And it's a transaction.
Yeah, and a lot of the younger generation, particularly in Michigan, I can only speak intelligently about agencies around this area, but they've gone from that defined benefit pension system to like the public safety or the public sector equivalent of a 401k. My old agency where I retired from, after 7 years, you were vested with your 401k money, and you could go wherever you wanted and just take that money and leave. With me, I had to do 25 years of service and be age 50. So I mean that's a pretty huge carrot and stick to keep someone that a lot of agencies that carrot and stick doesn't exist anymore. So,
agreed.
Yeah.
Very different.
Yeah. Chief, you are also, in addition to being the chief of police, running the day-to-day operations of your police agency, you're also the deputy director of public safety. I retired as the public safety director for the agency where I worked, as well as the chief of police. So I remember you and I drinking a lot of coffee together in my final years at the police department and the fire department where I worked. Commiserating together, venting maybe together. What are some of the challenges? First of all, what do you do as a deputy director of public safety?
So, started my career off as a police officer. I only wanted to be a police officer, chase bad guys, do all that stuff that we think we're going to do, and then it turns into paperwork and politics and all that other stuff. What it turned into for me is my city manager didn't feel that the oversight at the fire department was where he wanted it to be. So he made a motion to city council to have me appointed as deputy director of public safety, and that puts me over the fire chief. Now, at that point, I wasn't running in and putting out fires or saving babies or any of that kind of stuff. I did decide to go to if I had the cute title, to go to the fire academy in November of 2019.
I remember when you were in the fire academy.
Yeah. And so that was about 6 months long. So we remember what happened in March of 2020. So that 5 or 6 month academy turned into a 9 month academy. But I did go through and become a certified firefighter in the state of Michigan. So very unique, very different train of thought. I definitely seen both sides of I want my cops to be cops and our firefighters to be firefighters. The mentality's a little bit different. Neither one are right or wrong. It's just different. The administration's fine. A budget's a budget. Purchasing is purchasing. Hiring's hiring. None of that's different. But, cops like to be cops and firemen like to be firemen. And I'm, public safety administration is fine, but I'm certainly not in favor of public safety departments where they do both.
Sure.
It's just different. And again, I don't mean to beat up on departments like that, but it's very different. So I went through the fire academy and wanted to understand what they do, and you did as well. You went through it years ago as well.
I did, and I took a lot of. I'll confess this to you, Chief. I took a lot of joy in watching you go through the fire academy, because I remember also going through the fire academy about 3 years before you did.
Yep.
And yeah, and I
Very
remember pulling up car to car with a couple coffees, and we'd drink, and I'd say, "How's the fire academy going there, Paul?"
Yeah, I do remember that. You took great joy in that.
I did.
I don't regret it by any means. I enjoy, and it's a little bit different now when I actually will go and train with the firefighters and that. And I know it's sick, and any of the police officers out there are probably throwing up right now. But I'm very fortunate. Our fire department and our police department work great together, and it's not that way everywhere.
Right.
There are a lot of places where there's animosity, and I don't think there's anything wrong with some good camaraderie. That doesn't hurt. We should do that. But I'm fortunate enough to work in a place where the police and fire get along very well. They work together, and that makes life a lot easier. But yeah, so I don't know. Did I answer your question?
It did. I recently, and if you don't want to discuss this, that's fine. Recently, you've assumed more of a kind of an active role over at your fire department. You had a personnel transition over there, which kind of required that. How has that been? How's that been going?
So I went from being involved in some personnel matters and contract negotiations and purchasing, a little bit the big stuff, right? To a longtime fire chief, longtime firefighter in our department, retiring, and I was appointed as the interim fire chief as well. Okay, here we go, one more title, right? Let's add another hat on.
Yeah,
there.
your business cards are like the size of a
billboards,
8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. Yeah.
But it's been good. First of all, to go in and do an audit to see where they're at, to go through the personnel files, to go through their training, to go through their policies and procedures, or their all of that stuff, and to see where they're at equipment-wise. I found that the fire department was way behind on technology. They weren't doing things. Security, like they're not thinking about security. They're saving kittens out of trees, and they're there on the good days, and everybody likes the fire department showing up. But the world,
No. No, I'm kidding. Yes, of course they do.
But the world has changed, and one of the things I found is they keep the doors open, during the summer. And I know this is a little weird, but so they keep the doors open to keep it cool in the bay where they keep their trucks, their apparatus. I'm sorry.
Right.
And their doors going into their day quarters and that didn't have any locks on them, where anybody can walk in off the street and walk in where the firefighters are writing reports, are eating, and just no thought was put into that.
Right.
The world's a different place.
Sure.
There are a lot of people who are suffering from mental health illness, and they had an incident like a year or two ago, and they didn't think to put locks on there. Nobody thought that was a big deal. Well, the cop walked in and we locked the place down.
Right.
I don't want to get a firefighter hurt in their own head, where they're at.
Was there resistance at first, or?
Yeah, they make the jokes. You know what that is. This place is on lockdown.
Right. Sure.
But I think that's just what police and fire do. We make jokes, and sometimes it's maybe it's off color, but that's how we deal with things.
Sure.
But so far it's been good. It's give me an opportunity to see something a little bit different than just the police side of things.
Yeah.
And like I said, made me appreciate the difference between police officers and firefighters, and that's been good. Something different.
Definitely a different culture. For
Very
sure.
cool. They're a very different culture. They're as a culture, they're much tighter than I think police officers are, especially in the last few years, in the last 5-10 years, where things have changed a lot. Firefighters are still pretty tight, and police officers, when they take their gun belt off nowadays, most of them check out. They go home, they do their thing, and you don't see guys going out and having a drink at the bar, or hanging out on days off. It's just a little bit different, and the firemen are still doing that.
Okay. All right.
At least here.
I've always wondered if the nature of the job too contributes to that. When firefighters go somewhere, they go together in
It's a group.
Packs. Yeah, a group, a team. Most of policing is you're doing it in a solo capacity.
Yep.
Unless it's a
Maybe a partner.
crime of violence, you might have a partner. In Detroit, Doug always had a partner. But a lot of the police calls for service, the officer's going by him or herself.
Yeah.
So.
Very different.
Yeah, for sure. Chief, you have been the chief of police for 14 years. 14 years as the chief of police.
Most people don't go to prison that long.
That's right.
For violent crimes.
That's right. I'm not sure how accurate my statistic is here, or my little factoid, but it used to be that a police chief and a pastor had about the same number of years of tenure in their church or police department, and it was about 3 years. If a chief could make it past 3 years, he or she was doing quite well. It's really same with a pastor. You've been doing it for 14 years, which means based on your rugged, youthful good looks, you made chief at about 16 years old or so?
Yeah, it's straight out of junior high.
Yeah, that's right.
I was 30.
You were 30 when you made chief.
30, yeah.
Is that common for somebody to make chief of police at 30?
Definitely not. No, definitely not. Wasn't something I intended. The guy, we had a long-term police chief who was retiring, and the guy who should have been coming up behind him really messed it up bad. Had a very public incident, and ended up on the news, all the bad things. So I kind of found myself in a spot, and never with the intention at 30, being a sergeant. I'd been a sergeant for about 5 years at that point, of being a police chief. It just kind of happened, and I was fortunate enough to get the support of council, and kind of just fell on and ran with the torch, and I'm thankful for the opportunity. I don't know that I'd recommend it.
How come?
So I would say 4 to 7 years, I think in not just police work, I think in life, we find ourselves doing the midlife crisis of, okay, I want to do something different, right? I want to be a detective. I want to be I want to be an assistant manager. I want to be a regional director. I want to do something different. I'm kind of at the top. I mean, I guess I could go somewhere else and be city manager, or maybe go somewhere else and be a director of public safety, but it's kind of where it is. 14 years is a long time to do anything. And, there's a lot of politics, and also you're always on call. I know that sounds cheesy to a point, but my phone rings in the morning when I'm getting up. My phone rings in the evening. I'm going to bed. The text messages. I've kind of separated myself from emails. Like I only answer emails during business hours anymore. I found myself at night, in the morning, on the weekends, the holidays. If it's an email, it's not life and death. No one's dying. You can wait till Monday. So I've had to separate, but it's a long time to do anything. And I don't know that I'd recommend it because there were some tough times. We went through a round of layoffs with guys that I had trained and weren't that much younger than me, and that was brutal. I want to say that took years off my life because they were mad. And I don't blame them for being mad. They were losing their jobs, but that took years off my life, in my opinion, and it was tough. And I would never wish that on anybody else.
Right.
So stuff like that is that's hard to get over. So
I would have liked to have been a fly on the wall when you broke the news to your lovely wife that you're thinking about taking the chief's job at 30 years of age. I generally supportive. You've been doing it for a long time. Yeah, amazing. Yeah.
No, very fortunate. We always say in police work, you got to have several ex-wives or you're not doing it right. I'm still on what I call my starter marriage.
All right, good. Yeah, good.
Cheaper to keep her.
Cheaper to keep her.
No, she's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And it makes a huge difference because if you're fighting a battle at work and you're fighting a battle at home, boy, that's tough. And having a supporting wife like you've had. Yeah, I mean, it's you've been very fortunate that it makes a difference. Makes all the difference, in fact.
Right.
So,
biggest challenge becoming chief of police at 30 years old? You came up through the ranks, so it wasn't like you were brought in to be this. Well, you kind of were brought in to be a change agent.
Yeah.
You alluded to some of the problems. We don't have to go into those now, and probably best we don't go into those problems.
I tried to forget them.
That's right. But you kind of were brought in to be a change agent, but you came up through the ranks. You weren't brought in from the outside. 30 years old, you're now the man. You're now the boss.
Yeah.
Challenges there?
So outside of the normal challenges of, I think at that point I'd been a supervisor. Probably the biggest change was going from officer to sergeant for me. And I don't know about you, Gib, but that was the toughest swing. So I was working at that point. I had 25 years old. I had guys who were in their mid 50s. Now all of a sudden I'm their boss. That was a tough swing.
Sure.
The chief spot, I didn't see that so much. I don't know that, again, it was quite as easy. One of the things you alluded to was being chief of police at age 30 and you walk into the room and, here I'm the guy, I still got a couple pimples and, I just started shaving.
Your face has really cleared up nicely.
Thank you.
I must say.
Yeah, it's just the stress does it. But being a 30-year-old and walking into a group and we have a Thursday morning, the chiefs in this area get together and you were there for many years. And at that time, here I am, the 30-year-old, and all these guys are in their mid 50s, late 60s, and that was awkward.
Sure,
it was very different. And now I laugh. I think for your department, I'm on my fourth chief.
Oh yeah, right.
That I went through at least 3 generations. Around my 3rd generation in that room. I'm the old guy at age 44.
Right.
I've been.
You're the salty dog.
Like, oh, good. I'm gonna have to break in another group before I retire.
That's right.
Awesome. Yeah. So that's been challenging. Now it's good. It's fortunate. I have great relationships with all the area chiefs and respect all of them, and I think they respect me. We talk together and commiserate. And
you met with them this morning.
Yeah.
I assume it's Thursday morning.
Yep.
So
Yep. So it's nice
they
to
meet
be
at a secret, undisclosed location.
Yes, very, very high influential.
Underground bunker.
Or the local Coney Island.
Yeah, the Coney Island. Yeah, right.
High dollar. Yeah.
Were you going to say something, Doug? It looked like...
No, I was just going to make a joke about how it was a Coney, but you beat me to it.
Very fast. The eggs are great. Yeah.
You spoke of the difficult transition from going from officer to sergeant. In most agencies, the sergeant, some have corporals, but generally the sergeant is the first line supervisor. And you spoke of that being a more difficult transition, officer to sergeant, than say from captain to chief or lieutenant to chief. I would agree wholeheartedly with you on that, Chief. I recall leaving one afternoon shift at 11 p.m. as an officer and returning the very next day at 3 p.m. as the boss of all these knuckleheads I just worked with for the last 10 years.
Yep.
And don't think for 1 minute they don't say things like, I've seen you do this 100 times before, and now you're gonna gig me for doing the same thing. And I would say, yeah, you're darn right I am.
Yeah, you got caught.
I may have done it.
There we are.
And now you can't do it. So stop.
I would say that, so to anybody who's done that, I guess maybe one of the, looking back on it, when you get promoted, and Doug, this is maybe some advice for you, take it if you want, but if when you get promoted, take your time. Don't walk in the room, don't remind them. And we always laugh about, you got to point to your sleeve, sergeants wear, they have chevrons on their sleeve, paramilitary thing.
Right.
You don't have to point to them. They know they're there. Take your time and let them discover that you're now the boss, if that makes sense. Take your time. You don't have to, they'll gradually come to you. Nobody likes change, and I think cops are some of the worst, for change. It just takes forever.
Cops hate two things: the status quo and change.
How does that true?
They hate them both.
How does that true? Well, yeah, that is brutally pissed. So,
right.
So anybody who's looking to get promoted, just take your time. Let them discover. Don't walk in and immediately start changing things. Get their input. Take your time. Hey, we can do this different, and never promise something that you can't deliver on. Hey, this is the lieutenants. This is the chiefs. They can do that. I'll recommend, but I can't do it. And that's something I learned very early on. Don't make promises you can't keep, because boy, they will hold you accountable.
Right. I worked with a guy for, 25 years, and for much of our time together, I was his boss. But there was a good chunk of time when he and I were officers together, and I know out of his love for me, he was just kind of razzing me a little bit, but he used to look me right in the eye and say, "You can't make me do that." And I would say, "You're right. I cannot make you do that. I can only provide the consequences if you don't." And you go, "Fine."
Yep. Oh yeah. I remember the first time as a sergeant. I'd been here. I am 25 years old, and I tell one of the guys who got into the career a little later, but much older than me. All right. And I looked at him. I said, "Hey, hey, can you go do this for me?" And he looks at me and he says, "No," and turns around and walks away. And I stood there and stewed, and I'm like, "Oh boy, this. What am I gonna do?"
Yeah.
And I did nothing. And then I look out, and he's doing what I asked him to do. Oh man. Yeah. Wait for that.
A policeman who would just intentionally do something to you to increase your blood pressure. What a shock.
Oh yeah. So had to learn that each one of these guys and gals are different, and you got to find out what motivates them. And once you do, then it's usually pretty easy.
Yeah. Chief, you have given some really good advice to the officer looking to make sergeant. You said take your time. Don't immediately point to your department sanctioned authority. Let that leadership subordinate, and I don't even like that word subordinate, but don't let that relationship develop over time. Don't rush it. What advice would you give to maybe somebody right now listening who is a lieutenant, a captain, maybe even a senior sergeant in an agency, and they think, "Yep, I want to be the main man or the main woman someday. I want to be the chief of police in this agency." What advice would you give to that mid to upper level command officer who wants to be the chief someday?
So what I've done, and again, I run a tiny police department with a tiny budget. Lead by example. For me, something that has worked really well, again, being a young guy, and it's very different. When you're a little older, I think maybe you can get away with a little bit more. But I'm in uniform almost every day.
You look great, by the way.
Well, it's getting fit a little tight these days, so I'm working on that. I try to lead by example, and part of that is if the men and women are doing what they need to do on the streets, it frees me up to time to do the administrative work and the politics. There's a lot of politics in this job. And if you don't win the politics, you can't win the police work. And I know that sounds weird, but everything's politics. Whether it's dealing with the cops, whether it's dealing with electeds, whether it's business owners, homeowners, if you make a bad call to the neighborhood watch president or leader, they will take all of their time to go out there and tell everybody that you did a bad job. And you will have an enemy for life. Now, sometimes you can clean that up, but you will spend a lot of time fixing that relationship or not, or they will spend a lot of time trying to make sure you're unemployed. So winning the politics is huge, but leading by example for that lieutenant sergeant out there is huge. The men and women who are working for you want to see that you still know how to do it. You still know how to go and sign onto a car and, take the runs and show up with them, show up on a night shift and do stuff. It's worked well for me. And when I've drifted from that, there's been a penance to pay, and guys get mad, and they he's disconnected. He doesn't know, what we're doing out there, and leading by example and winning the politics of the day. Go the extra mile. I know it's a little cliche, but the bosses want to see you do a little extra, come in early, pick up an extra, task or something to do, and the men and women want to see that you're still one of them. So there's a lot to do in an 8 or 12-hour day. But
sure. When I was the chief of police and the public safety director, I had a pretty active social media presence on behalf of the department, and I would like you do. I attended the homeowners association meetings and the business meetings, and one of the guys that I worked with for a long time asked me, why do you do all that? I think he said, why do you do all that crap? And I said, I do that so you don't have to. I make those good relationships with the politicians, the HOA presidents, the business associations, so you don't have to. So you just do policing.
Yep. That's the administrative side of things.
That's right.
So,
yeah.
So that the officers out there doing the stuff on the street, going to the calls, making the traffic stops can do that. They don't have to worry about council member so-and-so being mad.
Right.
I'll take that spear.
That's right.
So hopefully somebody pulls it out of me at some point.
That's right. Right. Well, Chief, you have been a great friend over the years. Still are a great friend. We were officers together. We were chiefs together. Now I'm proud to be one of your guy as the chaplain, as a crossing guard. Doing a great job out there. I'd say keep up the great work that you're doing. Doug, anything else that we have for this?
I don't think so.
All right. Why don't we, Chief, anything you would add?
Thank you guys. Thanks for listening to me. Again, small town, small budget, and appreciate. I don't know if any of this works for anybody, and then Ron, thank you for everything you've done for me through the years. I really appreciate you, and thank you for always being an ear for me. It's more appreciated than you'll ever know.
All right, good. I'm gonna cry.
Yeah.
Oh no. Cry right into the mic, please.
Like ugly crying.
Yeah. Yeah. Then people are gonna really wish we had video.
That's right.
Look at him.
Look at him.
Should we give our exit spiel?
Let's do it.
Should we still plug Twitter at all? Have you even used the Cop House Twitter?
Go ahead and plug it. I'll get back into it.
Okay.
And it's called X, by the way.
I'm not calling it that. I refuse. It's
all
dumb. Right. All right. Follow us on social media. We are the Cop House Podcast on Facebook and at Cop House Podcast on Twitter and Instagram.
X.
I'm not calling it that.
All right, fine.
And then you can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, all of the major platforms. And if you wouldn't mind too, if you like the show, leave us a review, 5 stars or whatever the scaling system is on that platform. It does help us get recommended in people's recommended podcast feeds. The more reviews you have, the more the algorithms will plug the show for us.
Sorry.
This is the most I've talked this entire episode.
And I snored through it. That was very rude of me.
Yeah,
I'm
what
sorry.
a jerk.
Yeah, I totally.
Yeah.
And to our brothers and sisters out there who are doing policing, thank you for your service. God bless you, and be careful out there.
Be safe, everybody.